In this garage, an industry was born. Literally, Silicon Valley started here. So in this garage, they were tinkering physically. At Stanford, what we tinker with is not tools like this. We tinker with virtual reality simulations and test what they do to the mind. My name is Jeremy Balanson. I founded Stanford's Virtual Human Interaction Lab. I'm a professor that studies virtual reality. If you think about what makes us special, what makes all of us different from one another, there's of course a genetic component, but it's really about your experiences. If you think about the top 10 things who've made you, you, a lot of those are going to be 5-minute, really intense, wonderful, and maybe some not so wonderful experiences along our journey. What VR does is it gives you this fantastical experience that could be built by any programmer to do anything. However, the brain treats it as if it were real. And so working with HP, we're designing an amazing set of experiences that really make you rethink hard issues. And one of our lines of research for 15 years now has asked the question, how are we going to use VR to solve tough problems? And the paradigm of the virtual mirror is you walk up to a mirror, you put on the goggles, you're in virtual reality, and you see yourself. We've scanned your body and it looks like you, and then we hit a button and you become a different gender, a different race, and you then occupy someone's body, you walk a mile in their shoes. VR becomes a tool to study how other people experience the world and bridging that gap between the self and others. We treat virtual reality as a medium and we ask the big question, what is a person in an age where VR is everywhere? How is this medium going to change the world?
All right. Well, that was a great video, and thank you for allowing us some time here today at Gatherverse. I'm Mike Belcher. I'm HP Senior Director of Edtech Innovation, and I work with universities and K-12 institutions as we think about how emerging technologies are going to affect our world. And so the opportunity for HP to work with folks like Jeremy and his team at Stanford are really at the forefront of how these emerging techs are truly going to improve our lives. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time on what's driving these impacts and this depth of learning. And hopefully it will make a lot of sense for you. So as we look at new technologies, and I'm going to share some technologies, please don't think of this as a pitch. This is really about understanding why we're doing what we're doing and what sort of technologies we're developing. But for example, we're now in our 5th generation of headsets. And one of these latest generations are actually leveraging technology that allows us to not only have really terrific experience, but to actually have new measures and sensors embedded inside of these headsets so that you can actually get human interactivity sort of data sets. And so being able to measure cognitive load is one of these really kind of cool insights. And it's one of the things that we're really excited about for the future. And so I'm going to share a little video here from our scientist and bioanalytical scientist, Dr. Erika Siegel.
Hi, I'm Dr. Erika Siegel, and I'm a research scientist at HP Labs in Palo Alto. I've been studying human cognition and emotion for the better part of 15 years. And I'm part of a team of researchers developing the AI that powers Omnicept. What is cognitive load? The amount of mental effort that's required to perform a task or learn something new is called cognitive load. Human information processing, mental effort, and cognitive load have been studied by researchers interested in learning and performance for over a century. Every individual has their own information processing capacity. This is sometimes called working memory capacity. And that capacity, it's fixed, it's limited, and it varies from person to person. One way to think about information processing capacity is like the amount of food a person can hold in their mouth at a given time. And cognitive load is like the amount of effort that's required to chew and swallow that food. Sure, it may be possible to stuff 44 marshmallows into your mouth at once, but is it going to be comfortable? Probably not. Is it the optimal way to eat? Definitely not. What about a single sesame seed? Would you even bother? We can think of information processing capacity in a similar way. If you have too much information to process at once, you just can't think. Too little, and it's not worth the effort. In fact, research shows that cognitive load is an important predictor of how well you learn, what you remember, and performance. Research also indicates when your cognitive load is too high for too long, it can result in chronic stress and burnout. The connection between cognitive load, learning, and performance makes it a particularly powerful tool for training and an ideal candidate for integration into VR. Let's take technician training, for example. Monitoring trainees' cognitive load while they work through a task can reveal particular areas of struggle or strength for the user and can uncover a roadmap for targeted and timely interventions. Another use is A/B testing, where cognitive load can take design thinking to the next level, allowing you to measure users' reactions to different product designs or structural layouts without ever having to design a physical prototype. Or imagine overcoming fear of public speaking by knowing when you're really ready to step onto that stage, using cognitive load measures and adding a scientific level of understanding of your preparedness. For more information, visit hp.io/Omnicept.
One of those key, unique, emerging technologies that we believe has this potential to kind of change the world, right? And so embedding these inside of headsets, getting the cost down, making this something that is in the realm of possibility for learning and all sorts of other use cases is something that we think is really important, particularly in higher ed. So in this current version, just to give you some ideas, we have things like not only eye tracking, and we know where the user is in the experience, but we're also measuring pupil dilation. And so we know what sort of reactions are happening. We have heart rate sensors. We have a face camera to track facial expressions. And so now you've got this set of data that allows us to come up with this cognitive load sort of data set that makes things far more easy for us to understand who aren't experiencing this, and maybe even how our own bodies are betraying what we think we're getting out of something. And so this ability to start to understand, what sort of brain capacity do we have? What is our performance level inside of this? Are we being challenged enough or too little or way overloaded? Do we have a real strong sense of expertise in what we're doing? And to get this sort of data set back is incredibly powerful. So through this AI engine of taking this data set back, we can now, while the user is inside of an experience, be able to provide this insight back so that every experience allows us to go back and really rehash what transpired. Where did we maybe have some of that cognitive load or underload, right? Depending on what we were experiencing. So as VR developers, this is really, really powerful. And for researchers, particularly in higher ed, this is something that just kind of changes the game. That's why we're seeing so much interest in this from higher education. And so, some of the things that we'll make sure we get shared here are, where to go and learn more about this. We do have an SDK that is open to all higher ed institutions. It's open to anyone who wants to utilize it. And we just have a pay-for-play sort of use if you develop something that you will commercially release. But to understand it, see how easy it is to embed is one of these things that we think is super powerful. And one of the areas that we think is important to really go in and see, and Erika talked about some of that in our video, is that we're already embedding this into commercially available sort of content, right? And so we'll share some videos on a few of these from folks like Ovation and Thea, as well as a new one coming out from Victory XR. And so here we see Ovation, which, is, if you haven't ever experienced Ovation, I use it myself, but it's a public speaking communication tool that allows you to present in a number of different sort of experiences and give you all sorts of great insights, even before Omnicept was available. And so tracking, how many times did I use first person or third person, or how many so's, et cetera, did I use? But now to have this cognitive insight, to know where was I looking inside of the audience and exactly where was I looking? What were some of the bioanalytic feedback? So where did I maybe get nervous? And what sort of transpired there? Did my heart rate go up? Did my pupils dilate? And I can go back and now maybe rehash that section, go work on that section where I might have struggled a little bit or felt overloaded. Really, really kind of cool use case. We also see it in things like Thea Interactive's Claria. So for design professionals, to be able to design VR experiences and know what that actual sort of cognitive feedback is from that user. How did they really experience this? What were the things that made them go, aha, or that wow moment? And what were the things that maybe made them nervous, et cetera, inside of this experience? To be able to provide that back to designers so that you can improve that experience before you go into developing a full solution, super, super powerful. And then in the upper right-hand corner here, if we look at Victory XR's Academy, they've developed a really great human anatomy lab that allows, I believe up to 50 different users to be inside of this virtual lab and to experience it in a whole nother way. One of the things that they're working on right now is taking this cadaver lab and actually embedding Omnicept into it to really make this be probably one of the best medical training solutions. So what are those areas as a future nurse, a future doctor, or a surgeon? What are those areas where maybe my cognitive load is pushed too far for too long? What are those areas that I might want to work on more? And to be able to get that sort of bioanalytical feedback, incredibly powerful. So we think you'll start to see this embedded in all sorts of really sort of cool use cases. These are just three that we're sharing with you right now. And if you don't understand kind of why eye tracking and the different types of eye tracking are important, if you're measuring traditional eye tracking, generally where someone is looking, but we can almost see exactly who you're looking at, for example, inside of this Ovation Omnicept eye tracking. And so this ability for, if you're in a large audience, to know where you're spending your time looking, and did you look at really 4 people the entire time? Or were you making that direct eye contact with numerous people while you were doing this? Incredibly powerful. And if you haven't experienced this, this is one of those solutions that anyone who does public speaking, presenting, et cetera, we think is a really great place to try this. The Thea Interactive Claria solution also really, really great, but focus groups are really challenging, right? If you think about getting that feedback and what was their real feeling, is there any sort of group feedback where someone says something negative about something you like and maybe you now don't want to bring it up, or vice versa? And so this ability to get that real feedback immediately in exactly the areas of this experience, super, super valuable. And think how fast this speeds up the development process, right, for these different sort of experiential learning environments. And being able to speed those prototypes into market, it's money, right? Time is money. And so how do we help? And if we think about higher education, very, very similar, right? There's so many different use cases, whether that's someone who has a reading disability, maybe they're dyslexic, but it's so hard to decipher where and what's going on in their dyslexia. And are there different sort of strategies we could take that would allow us to put the letters of the words in orders that makes it easier for that user to read? We're gaining so much insight so quickly, so fast. This is hopefully an area that as you're looking at developing content, you're looking at as well. And then this idea of neurocognitive disorder diagnostics. So how can we tell when someone has an issue, and can we tell it faster and easier and maybe pinpoint it much faster and easier from folks like ViewMind? Also really, really telling and valuable. And then we'll see all sorts of new ways of creating all sorts of training, right? Whether you're in manufacturing or sales or other areas, folks like Pioneer Adaptive through Singularity Labs are developing these sort of experiences as well, so that you can tell exactly where someone is creating some of that expertise and maybe where they could use more time, more help, more support to give really good differentiated sort of instruction. And this idea of situational learning and experiential learning, we think this is where VR has probably its best sweet spot inside of higher education. So hope this was helpful. If there's anything we can ever do for you in the future, reach out. Thanks again. My name's Mike Belcher, and my email address is mike.belcher@hp.com. Thanks for joining.